up there. Doop-de-doo. Let's see, make sure we're all live and good to go. Waiting on confirmation. Make sure my stuff is going. Yes, there I am. Had to go in and do some work. I'm sorry about that, guys. Gotta love live content, don't you? Let me go ahead and turn down my phone. Alrighty. Hello, and welcome back to episode 13 of Chiefsman's Corner Live. I am your host, one of the leadership team of the WFL, Coach Winuvas of the Seattle Seahawks. We have ourselves an enjoyable broadcast tonight, hopefully. Our game plan tonight is to discuss some housekeeping notes as usual. We'll have a couple more today than we usually do, and we'll have a look back at week 8 of the WFL season, the halfway point of the WFL season, and we'll get some players of the podcast as usual. We'll finish out with our usual interactive live segment, which is now going to be called Ask the Chief. If anyone is tuned in live, welcome aboard and thank you for listening. You can comment in YouTube chat, and I have my phone pulled up beside the broadcast to see and respond to on the show. If you're watching the recording of this, thank you for watching. We appreciate any and all support. Without you guys, the WFL doesn't exist, and I do mean that. The first thing I want to talk about tonight is the WFL's incentive plan, as I have the last couple of podcasts. This plan allows you to get some perks that aren't available for every member simply by doing some extracurricular activities that involve WFL. Anything from Twitter to articles that involve articles on the Neon Sports site, to commenting or participating in the show, and now recruiting members for the league if they stick around for at least 4 weeks. Anything that makes WFL a more immersive experience and increases its presence in the Madden community earns you some sort of credit. A link to the incentive plan is available using the command /incentive plan in Discord. That is /incentive plan, all one word, in Discord. The second thing to talk about is our Ask the Chief form for this show. You can use this form during the week between episodes to submit any questions you have for me, and I'll answer them during the show, giving you credit for the question. It's an easy way to build up incentive points and provide extra content for the podcast. Use the command Ask the Chief to pull up the form in Discord. That is /AskTheChief, all one word, in Discord. I'd also like to take this time to welcome 2 new owners we added today to the league. We have a new Jaguars owner and a new Lions owner. They seem to be fairly enthusiastic guys. We recruited them from the Neon Sports Discord. Let's give them a WFL welcome and show them how WFL operates. With us officially on the back half of the season at this point, it is time to start thinking about the WFL Associated Press. Their task will be to pick players to award attribute points to in the offseason based on awards earned in the following categories: League MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and our very own WFL All-Pro team for the NFC and AFC. These awards will supersede the ones given by Madden and are awarded by owners who are members of the WFL Associated Press. So these are awarded by owners in the league to owners in the league. Lastly, we are looking for a 5th owner to join our WFL Players Association. This group of owners are the members that dole out punishments for violations reported by WFL leadership. Membership in this is a true honor. It means you represent the best of the best among non-leadership owners as far as gameplay and rules go. If you think you fit this mold, please talk to me via DM about a spot in the WFLPA. With housekeeping out of the way, let's recap scores from Week 8 action and highlight our offensive and defensive players of the podcast. And as such, bringing it up on screen, I was going to go through and do stats for all of this. However, we had a lot of CPU and games that I'm not sure got played or not. I did look on the console a little bit before I started. So some of these games, I know some of them got played, so I did get some stats for those games, but I'm not going to go over the stats in detail on any of these games. I'm just going to go over the scores, and then I'm going to go over my players of the podcast, and then some honorable mentions for both offense and for defense. So we're going to start with Cincinnati falling to 4-5 on the season with a 34-28 loss to the Cleveland Browns, who moved to 7-1 on the regular season. Nick Chubb had himself a good game in this one, carrying the rock 22 times for, I believe it was 112 yards and 2 touchdowns in this contest. So Nick Chubb getting it done for the Cleveland Browns as they march out to a 7-1 record at the halfway mark of the regular season. Denver falls to 1-7 on the season as they lose in a simulation to the CPU Jaguars, or were CPU Jaguars. They now have an owner. 28-21 was the final there. Jaguars moved to 5-3 on the season, so the CPU Jaguars holding it down for their new owner now. And the Denver Broncos do fall to 1-7 as mentioned earlier. Houston squeaks out a win over the Tennessee Titans 22-20 as the Tennessee Titans fall to 1-6 and are now ownerless. The Texans move to 5-2 on the season. Washington with a 3-point win over the autopiloted Colts as they are out of town this week and next week, I do believe. 23-20 is the final there. Washington moves to 6-3 on the season. Indianapolis falls to 6-2, still ahead in the division if I'm not mistaken. New England and their wonderful CPU coach take a beating from the New York Jets. 35-3 is your final there. The Green Bay Packers squeak out a win in probably the game of the week from Week 8. 6-2 Green Bay Packers now on the season, visiting the now 6-2 Buffalo Bills. A barn burner there. Low-scoring defensive battle won by the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. 17-13 final there. Miami 24-7 win over the Detroit Lions, who are winless on the season, but now at least have an owner. Unfortunately, they face a very tough test in Green Bay this week, the defending WFL Bowl champion Green Bay Packers and Meek Boy. So that's going to be a tough test for our new owner coming in. Arizona falls to 1-7 on the season, and I say 7 because his 8 came in Week 9. 31-28 the final there against the Minnesota Vikings, who go up to 6-2 on the season and kind of trying to keep pace with the Green Bay Packers in a very tough NFC North. The Carolina Panthers, after a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, surprisingly get upset here, I'm going to call it, from the Atlanta Falcons. 21-7 the final here. Atlanta moves to 2-6 on the regular season. Carolina falls to 6-3, still leading that, or still second in that division, excuse me. But a little bit of a letdown. I guess they kind of put all their eggs in the beaten Tampa basket and didn't really game plan for the Falcons here, and the Falcons caught them napping. 21-7 final there. Las Vegas and the Saints. This was a simulated game, I know for a fact. Simulation, straight sim goes to the Saints here as they win 17-14 over the Las Vegas Raiders. Saints go to 3-5 on the season. Vegas falls to 3-4 on the season. The poor Steelers continue their woeful ways as a CPU team. 0-8 on the season as they get drubbed by the Eagles. 31-10 the final here. Philadelphia goes to 5-2 in a now very competitive NFC East, as we'll talk about here shortly in the back end of this schedule. San Francisco loses to the Los Angeles Rams 26-6. Kind of a little bit of an upset here as the San Francisco 49ers are leading that suddenly tight NFC West with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks all jockeying for that top spot in the NFC West. San Francisco falls here, though, 26-6 to the Rams, who now are 4-3 on the season. New York, 21-7 win over the Seattle Seahawks. It should have been a lot bigger, but unfortunately we got disconnected in the fourth quarter after, I believe it was 31-17 was the score at that point. So we awarded a sim win to Cly, who moves to, and the Giants, Cly and the Giants move to 5-3 on the regular season. Seattle falls to 4-4 on the regular season. Yes, I know it says 5-4 on there. They won their Week 9 game. We're not talking about that right now, though. Baltimore comes up just short in a simulated game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 24-21 is your final there. Baltimore falls to 0-8 on the season. Tampa Bay moves to 7-1, getting a little revenge after that loss to the Carolina Panthers in Week 7. And the last game on the docket, which is where the NFC East comes into play. Maniac and the Cowboys, after starting the season, I do believe they started 0-4, have rattled off 4 straight wins. 38-17 is your final here against a game but outmatched Chicago Bears squad. Smash is playing good football, but I think his offensive output is just lacking right now with that Justin Fields and a lack of wide receivers are hurting him right now. And Maniac has is finally kind of maybe not figured the game out, but maybe he's figured something out here, and he moves to 500 on the regular season, 4-4 as we go into week 9 of the regular season. As I turn off this little thing right here, let's see some chat real quick. Let's see. They were not all up at the top of the game. Great game. Yeah, okay. They played that game and went to overtime. Okay. Not sure what game we're talking about, but hey, whatever. All right. Jump back in there. All right. So some things I want to talk about. Players of the podcast. I'm going to bring up my little chart here because I made some notes of some games that I know were played. Some of the games I didn't really branch into, but I'm going to say, first off, my offensive player of the podcast for week 8 is going to be the Falcons running back Tyler Algier. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Had 14 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown in the 21-7 win, surprise win, upset win over the Carolina Panthers. Some honorable mentions. Packers wide receivers Romeo Doubs, 6 catches for 110 yards in that 17-13 defensive win over the Buffalo Bills. Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson, 10 catches, 184 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 31-28 win over the Cardinals. And Browns halfback Nick Chubb, which I mentioned earlier, 22 carries, 112 yards and 2 touchdowns in that 6-point win over the Bengals. Defensive player of the podcast. Who did I give it to? I honestly don't remember. Oh, there we go. Vikings defensive end Danielle Hunter. 2 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble in that 3-point victory over the Arizona Cardinals. Some honorable mentions. There were quite a few special defensive players that I put down and marked down notes for on this podcast. Number 1, Packers defensive end Dean Lowry. 4 tackles and 3 sacks in that 17-13 win over the Buffalo Bills. Cardinals defensive end J.J. Watt had 3 tackles, a sack and a half, and a forced fumble in that loss to the Vikings by 3. Falcons free safety, Richie Grant, 4 tackles, 2 interceptions, one of those being a pick 6 in that 21-7 upset win over the Panthers. Browns outside linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, 2 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 interception in that 6-point win over the Bengals. Cowboys cornerback Jordan Lewis, 1 tackle, 2 interceptions, one of those being a pick 6 in the 38-17 win over the Bears. Rams defensive end Aaron Donald, 2 tackles, 2 sacks, and a 26-6 win over the 49ers. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle of the 49ers, who had 2 tackles and a sack and a half, unfortunately, in a 26-6 loss to the Los Angeles Rams. And that does it for our players of the podcast and our honorable mentions. I think I do want to add a little segment before we jump into Ask the Chief, though. As I bring back up my wonderful little setup here, I'm going to go back to the home page and take a look-see at our division rankings, because at this point now, we can kind of start to make some assumptions. The last couple of broadcasts we've done, we've kind of been a little vague on doing some of these standings and whatnot, and we're starting to get a clearer picture. I believe last podcast I was asked the question, who do I think should make the playoffs based on the records at that point? I made some predictions. They're probably all for naught now. I have no idea what I predicted, honestly. But now looking at the standings, it looks like Cleveland, short of having either an injury rash, a rash of injuries, or having Cincinnati kind of catch fire, it looks like it's Cleveland's division to lose. And again, unless they implode or just have injury issues, Cincinnati's having a tough time keeping up. I think Bus just finally figuring some stuff out on offense. Again, this Madden is really tough to figure out offensively speaking, but I think he's making some headway there and moving through, and he's getting some better results, but still might be too little too late for this season. In the South, there are 3 teams within a game of each other. That's a really tight division. I expected to see Tennessee more up here, but obviously with the loss of the Titans owner, that'll make it a little bit tougher. And the gaining of a Jacksonville owner, he jumps right into a division race in the midway point of the season. That's all you can really ask for when you jump into a league as a new owner, is jumping in and having a chance to make a playoff run. So hopefully he can catch on to our rule set and be good and enjoy his time here and be a good contributing member going forward. But he jumps in at a really good time for Jacksonville Jaguars. In the East, it is a really tough race. Now I see New England falling off because of the ownership. There's a lack of owner there in New England right now. But Miami, Buffalo, and the Jets are all tough outs. I've been watching Buffalo's owner now a little bit. He is definitely a quality player. And Ross there in Miami is a quality player. Kobe's a quality player there in New York with the Jets. That division is going to come down to the wire. It's right now it's a 2-horse race, but Jets could easily insert themselves into that picture with some divisional matchups with Miami and Buffalo later in the season. And don't count New England as a CPU out, but they're going to be probably out of it unless they get an owner here in the next couple of days. In the West, it looks like Kansas City's got a 2-game lead over Las Vegas. I think that Kansas City is starting to turn it on a little bit and figure stuff out. We'll see what happens going forward. But it looks like if I had to say AFC East at this point, I would say Kansas City's going to win the West. I would say I'm going to give the nod, even though I'm going to give the nod to Buffalo here in the East. In the South, I'm going to give the nod to Indy with the talent pool. And in the North, I'm going to give the nod to Cleveland. And the wild cards, I think, surprisingly, are going to be Miami because they'll be second in the division. I think the Jets will make third in the division and be a wild card in the East. And I'm going to say out of Houston or Jacksonville, I think those two will beat up on each other. And I could see Cincinnati sneaking in there with their offensive talent and maybe making a run at that third wild card spot. Not to knock anything against Houston or Jacksonville. They're having good years. But I think they may beat each other up a little bit. And beating each other up, I think Cincinnati can sneak in because Cincinnati's got some weaker divisional games with Baltimore and a CPU Pittsburgh team right now. No offense to Baltimore. He's having a rough go of it. He's learning the game just like everybody else is. So I think Cincinnati might be able to get some wins there against some less than stellar competition and sneak into that third wild card spot. In the NFC, in the North, you have Green Bay and Minnesota with Chicago kind of on the outskirts. They're fading now, but I think Chicago's got a good owner and a good squad to build in for the future. Green Bay and Minnesota, though, are going to be battling it out to the wire. Both of those owners are really good. We have a former WFL Bowl champ in Meat Boy and the Packers there, and Rimster there, one of our leadership team, is a quality guy there in Minnesota as well. In the South, we have Tampa Bay and Carolina sneaking in there. New Orleans and Atlanta kind of playing for third and fourth place right now. Tampa Bay is still the cream of the crop in that little division, but don't count Carolina out there. In the East, this has suddenly become a dogfight with Maniac charging from the back. We have Philadelphia currently in the lead of the division at 5-2. You have Washington at 6-3. You have the Giants at 5-3, and you have Dallas at 4-4. I said it in the last podcast. If Maniac can turn it on, the NFC East could easily produce all four of those teams could easily make the playoffs. And I still think that may hold serve, but with a tough Carolina squad and a tough Minnesota squad or Green Bay, depending on who wins the division, might be down to just two teams coming out of the East, but it will not be for lack of wins. I think you're going to have a minimum of 10 wins to get into the playoffs in the NFC, and that's a tough task to do, especially in that NFC East where everybody's just beating up on each other. In the West, it's a 3-dog race. You have 5-3 San Francisco. You have 4-3 the Los Angeles Rams. You have a 5-4 Seattle team who's played their Week 9 game against the Arizona Cardinals and pulled it out. So they are now 5-4 on the season. But next week they face a tough Tampa squad. And knowing Seattle's owner, newsflash, that's me, that's going to probably be a game that's going to be it's going to be a blowout, not for Seattle. It's going to be a blowout for Tampa. Tampa's going to probably run roughshod all over the Seahawks. So I'll probably be at 5-5 going into the break. And I'm going to have to get tough here because I still have 2 games against the Rams because I don't think I've played the Rams this year. I have 1 game left in hand against San Francisco. I've played both my division games against Arizona. I've yet to play the Rams, and their defense scares me. And I've played San Francisco 1 time. Hopefully I may have figured him out for next time. We'll see. I think it's just going to come down to who throws the least amount of interceptions will win the game, which is sadly most of the way Madden goes this Madden, which sucks, but anyway. So in the NFC, I would say making the playoffs, I'm gonna give the nod to Meat Boy. The champs are still there. I'm gonna say Green Bay makes the NFC North. They're the champs of the North. Tampa, I'm gonna say, is gonna be the champ of the South, but don't sleep on Carolina. Ooh, the NFC East. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say Washington, but I could see any one of those teams making the top of the division, honestly. All of them are very, very good. It is a murderer's row division. And in the West, I'm gonna lean on the Rams and their defense to pull it out and take the NFC West. Your wild cards, I think Carolina's got enough and has enough opponents in their division that they can beat up on to get the wins they need to get the wild card spot. So Carolina gets their first wild card spot. I think Minnesota is another team that has a couple of feeders in that division to where they can feast on some opponents and get to 10 wins. I think Minnesota makes the second wild card spot. And then in the NFC East, throw a dart, for crying out loud. I could see Philly, I could see the Giants, I could see Dallas all making that third wild card spot. But unless they pull out to 11 or 12 wins, which I don't see happening, I don't think all three make it. So I'm gonna pick the Giants. I'm gonna go with the Giants and say they make the third and final wild card spot. Dallas is gonna have a good year, it looks like, but finish out of the running. Philadelphia is gonna have a good run, but fade, it looks like, in my opinion. But I mean, that's why we keep playing. That's why we play the game. So that's my kind of playoff picks going into week 9 of the regular season. Let's see if we got any. I don't think I had any Ask the Chief stuff as of. Oh, hey. Okay. In your discussions with the EA devs and management, what input have they given you regarding their efforts and intentions to improve CFM? Okay. So pretty much the patch that's coming in the next 7 days. I think it's at the end of this week or early next week. This patch has been announced and rumored and put out there to basically be the patch that either saves Madden or dooms Madden. I know they've put a lot of stuff that would normally be fixed by now, like some small stuff. They've put on hold to put in this big patch, and that goes for not just CFM, but for MUT, which I know is a dirty word to most of us, but MUT has had issues, like all the game modes, Face of the Franchise, Superstar KO, the Yard, MUT, CFM, regardless of what you think of those modes or whether you play those modes, all of them have had issues with connections, with glitches, all kinds of things. Honestly, for once, the gameplay is actually pretty decent in my opinion. The defense is still too powerful, I think, but it's one of those things where I would rather have a more powerful defense than the way it has been for the last couple of years, where offense is pretty much king, and you could basically drop back and throw dimes all over the field, unless you're me, and then you just throw picks. I think most owners prefer the defense the way it is. I personally do. I like the pass rush the way it is, even though my pass rush has been horrible. It should be. My team is terrible at pass rush. If you look at their stats, it holds up that way. But I do think that the interceptions are still too frequent. We've played around with sliders a little bit to try and help with that. It has done varying degrees of success. We're talking about doing some more slider tinkering. We were going to try and do it for week 9. But we decided not to. But as far as like the patch coming up, to kind of get back to the question, it really is kind of a make or break, because my biggest concern as one of the leadership team is last year when we started, and most everybody that's in this circle was around for Madden 22. We got the draft glitch. Now, to be fair, the first time we got it was my fault, but it's one of those things like, I accidentally paused the draft, and that completely effed it up. That shouldn't be a punishment that severe. You shouldn't have a game-breaking glitch like that over a single pause. That is unacceptable. It should be unacceptable. But it was an accident. I did it. I'll lay claim to it. And we had to restart as a result. And then when we started the second time, we got to week 14, and then apparently got stuck in a loop where basically we tried to go to week 15. And those of you that weren't here, I'm kind of telling you the story. Those of you that were here, you know the story. We jump to week 15. We get in week 15, and then we get cycled back to week 14. And we try and skip back to week 15. We just got caught in this loop. So basically, we spent about a month and a half of gameplay playing the game, and wasted. It was pretty much wasted. So ultimately, it was frustrating, and that's something, again, that's unacceptable. It should be unacceptable. Those are some of the things that reportedly are going to be addressed in this patch. Again, they're going to be patching a ton of the modes, because all the modes have had issues. Mud have had issues receiving card rewards. Getting the new field pass they introduced that was supposed to be this big thing. Apparently, it's broken to hell and back. Doing the grind for cards and stuff is not working at all, or is not rewarding players like it should be. Face of the franchise is, well, it's crap, but I mean, it's also got the same type of glitches as what franchise mode CFM does. The yard, who plays the yard? That was a terrible mode. Superstar KO, another who cares mode. Madden is at the point now where it does need to fix a lot of these issues, and I think part of that problem is going to come from the fact that I don't think this is something you can just fix with a patch. I've said this for a while now. I don't think these are issues that you fix with a patch. These are fundamental breakdowns in coding. And to fix that, you've got to tear it down and restart. And they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Either because they don't have the talent in the building, which is a possibility, or B, they just choose not to because they're going to try and limp it along as much as possible. I, for one, do hope they fix most of the issues. My biggest concerns right now as the commissioner, as one of the leadership, is draft, getting looped, and then also the 32 owner glitch. That one bugs the crap out of me. We haven't had that yet, but it's part of the reason why we're doing regular coaches instead of custom coaches. Because for those of you that are new to us here, we restarted 6-7 times this Madden just to make sure we could get all 32 owners in. And we finally got to a point where we were just like, look, this is the last try. And this, what we're in, was the last try. We've been talking about it in leadership, and I think we'll still try if something happens to this particular iteration. But it's frustrating, and I think a lot of people are feeling the grind of the EA not caring or not able to fix the problems. And it's a shame because I do think this game actually plays well, which is the first time I can say that in easily the last 6 or 7 years, easily. But I think this patch is definitely make or break. If after this patch franchises jump in and either A, have to restart, that would be back-breaking to every CFM out there to have to restart to make sure these glitches are repaired in your franchise. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. I have a feeling that that's what they're going to announce. If you want to get all these fixes to your franchise, restart your franchise. That's not acceptable. And I think, though, that's what it's ultimately going to come down to. I just have this feeling that when they announce the patch notes, they're going to be like, yeah, we fixed all these issues, but, and that's where the restart's going to be pulled in. And we're just, I think pitchforks for EA will be appropriate at that point. So let's see what we got here. Pulled out a product as per their licensing agreement. I'm speculating. Clyde, that's a good question. I mean, I think the thing about it is, like, the licensing agreement, I don't know if it states that they have to release something every year. It just states that it has to represent simulation football. I think that's where the license comes in. I think the NFLPA and NFL league stuff, I think it just ties into the simulation football aspect of it more than having to release every year. I think EA is the one that does it every year. I do think that, and I think that's a habit in most sports games in general, having that yearly release so you can get that roster update and, quote, new features. But let's be real, Madden, the biggest addition they've made to Madden in the last couple of years would be abilities. Not that great. I mean, they tried target passing in 19. They brought it back better with 23 with their skill-based passing they have in. I think it's better than target passing. I think it's better than vision cone. I like it. Still not good at it, but I like it. I think the licensing, though, honestly does come from it's just a simulation football thing, though. I don't think it has to be yearly. I think that's EA's choice to make it yearly, and I think it's also the industry as a whole's choice to make it yearly, because then you can keep reaping that money in, because you are putting a lot of investment into the technology to build this game, so you want to reap as much profit as you can. I do kind of understand EA and corporation side of it to a certain extent, but the microtransactions is where you kind of lose me a little bit. I don't mind I don't mind microtransactions as long as they're feasible and make sense. I would honestly, if microtransactions would help us fix CFM and they weren't crazy in cost, I would pay them tomorrow. Realistically, I would pay them tomorrow. But the stuff they do microtransactions for, in my opinion, is a waste of money. It's a waste of resources, and it's a money grab by corporations in general, whether it's 2K, whether it's EA. Microtransactions pretty much have ruined sports gaming as a whole. But that's a video for that's another topic for another thing. Agree on the target passing. First new gimmick that doesn't suck. Yeah, boy howdy. It actually is good. I do like it. I think it is overpowered. I'm not gonna lie. Like sometimes you can put passes in places with players that have no business putting the pass in that place. Like I still think that accuracy should matter as far as a rating's concerned. But it seems like freeform passing is a way to kind of get around ratings a little bit, but not 100%. Like bad quarterbacks will still make bad throws more consistently than good quarterbacks will. But I would like to see, for example, I would like to see more air on the ball. I would like to see being able to, drop an arc ball on a corner route where it's in the corner of the end zone, and let a guy actually kind of catch it with his back, to the play. A fade route, if you will, because that doesn't exist in Madden. Yes, they have fade routes, but the way you have to throw it is not the way you throw a fade route. You throw a fade route to the corner of the end zone, so that way your guy can catch it or nobody is. And that's never been represented in Madden. But like the freeform passing, like for example, I do pretty well with Josh Rosen, who has some good stats. He has some good attributes, but I feel like I'm outperforming what he should be playing as. And yet Lamar Jackson, who's also on my team at this point, has way better attributes at throwing the ball, but seems like he is equal to Rosen, which shouldn't be the case. In real life, who are you taking, Lamar Jackson or Josh Rosen? Okay, that's what I thought. You're taking Lamar Jackson. So, I think it still needs room for improvement, but I also think that making these attributes mean more, making the actual values themselves mean more, would be a huge boon. Having a differentiation between stats would be a huge boon. I mean, what's the harm in having guys have, throw powers in the 70s and 60s? If you go back and look at like NFL 2K5, they had professional quarterbacks who were second and third string guys who had throwing powers listed in like the 50s and 60s. But if you looked at it on a relative whole, on a relative scale, I mean, it makes sense because a lot of the other players that weren't quarterbacks were in the like 20s and 10s and 5s and low values. If you had a wider margin, a gap, I think you'd notice a lot more difference in players. But the problem is they want to cater to the players so much that they just make them make everybody about the same. What's the difference between 95 short accuracy and 94 short accuracy? Not a whole lot. What's the difference between 92 throw power and 90 throw power? Not a ton. Maybe a lot of difference between 92 and 82 throw power. Yeah. But that should be where the disparity should be. Like, you shouldn't have a bunch of guys have 90 plus throw power. It should be reserved for, like the guys who are truly elite arm talents. Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, just kind of spitballing a few guys, just those guys have elite arm talent, or had elite arm talent in the case of Matthew Stafford. I mean, he still does, but not as much as he used to. And some guys have average arms, and that's okay. Make them better accuracy. Make the ratings matter. You don't need abilities. You don't need all this other stuff. You just need ratings to matter. And having everybody, rated in the 80s doesn't make anybody different. Like I can get a good bit out of Deion Kane at 69 overall, And the only real reason he's that low is because of his awareness, which doesn't matter for a wide receiver because his route running skills are good, his hands are good. And if you compare him to other wide receivers on my team, even the elite ones like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett right now, he's comparable. Yes, he's lesser talent, but he is comparable, which shouldn't be the case. Again, who you taking, DK Metcalf or Deion Kane? That's what I thought. You're taking Deion Kane, right? No, you're not. You're taking DK Metcalf. Even me who loves Deion Kane and Madden would take DK Metcalf in a heartbeat. Okay? Make ratings matter. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. So, but that's enough from my rants. I think that pretty much covers it for Ask the Chief segment. I covered the one question. Again, I think this is a make or break patch. I think we have to see some significant strides in CFM glitches fixed to save it, because I think if this does not get received well or has poor reviews, I feel like owners as a whole, players as a whole, are going to leave in droves, and that's going to kill a lot of leagues because we're suffering it right now. A lot of guys have suffered some burnout that have left us recently, and they've told me as much. Some of them have left for other reasons, but most of them have left because they're just not having fun and they're tired of the glitches, and I understand it completely. And if this doesn't get fixed, I think it's just going to get worse to the point where we're going to be here with like maybe 12 to 16 owners and playing CPU games a whole lot, and that's not a whole lot of fun either. So it really is kind of a make or break for CFM in particular, just for that reason of we really need these glitches fixed so that way we can play. Because if you get to a point where you put in 2 to 3 months of effort and then see it just completely whitewashed, I don't know about you, but that pisses me off. And I feel like I've wasted not only money, but also time. And I don't have a lot of time to spend playing the game and doing these podcasts and stuff. I try and squeeze in this stuff where I can, and I enjoy doing it when I can. But this is something that if I put down Madden tomorrow, I truly won't hurt. I won't. I mean, I know some guys are like, oh, you love football, you love the NFL. Yeah, I do. I like football. I like the NFL. I like the community we have. I like all the guys here. But at the same time, I'm not going to beat my head against the wall with a subpar product that's been subpar for years just to get my football itch. I can go play hockey. I can go play soccer if I feel like it. I can play a whole lot of other stuff and spend my time better and have more free time to do other things. So it's just, that's a fact. I do enjoy doing this. I do enjoy the podcast. I enjoy the interactions. I enjoy you guys. But if we could do these same types of things and it not be Madden and something that we could all enjoy and would be relatively glitch free, I'd be doing it tomorrow. Got news for you. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be rugby. It could be tiddlywinks for all I care. If it could be fun and it could be something we could get together and play and do content on, dude, I'd be doing it tomorrow.